Hi everyone, this is Danielle Gardner and I'm here today with Tammie Sharp, who collaborated with me in the creation of the Aim Slower Cosmic Code or Collective Code. So thank you for joining me today, Tammie.
Thank you, my pleasure to be here.
So what we're going to do is just talk a little bit about the background of why this code exists from my perspective, and then we're going to talk about your work and the process that you went through to create this, and the process that you go through in general, which I'm looking forward to hearing about. So for those of you who haven't heard me talk about this before, one of the main motivations for me to actually have or pursue the creation of this design or this code is because I really wanted something tangible and physical in my business that I could offer clients. And if you're in online business like me, you know that pretty much everything you do is virtual, right? So it planted this idea that, God, wouldn't it be good to have something like, some kind of merchandise type thing. So that got the wheels turning for me, and I played around with some ideas, and then it wasn't going very well. So I decided I needed to collaborate with someone. But before I get to that point, the other thing is, like, why is this called the Aim Slower Code? I'll give you like the micro little story here. Basically, I've always done things fast. I walk fast, eat fast, although I'm getting way better with that. But, everything's kind of been fast. Wanted fast results, fast, high achiever, that kind of thing. And a few years ago, of course, in my business, I wanted to like get lift off straight away and all that kind of stuff. And a few years ago, I was sitting on my bed in the morning and I had been asking myself a couple of questions, a couple of reflective questions each day. And one of the questions I started to notice it was irritating me, right? And this question was, how can I create or experience more joy and ease in my work? Something to that effect. And I was kind of struggling to answer that. And then I noticed this one day, like, it's really irritating me. So I kind of tuned in, like closed my eyes, and then straight away, it's like I heard in my own voice, aim lower. So it was aim lower first. And I was kind of like, what? This is not something someone like me says, So it was really interesting. And I sat there, thinking about it, feeling into it, like first of all, like, what the hell was that? Then to sort of softening into it a bit and going, and then starting to sort of entertain this idea of what would that even look like to aim lower. And as I started to entertain that, these bubbles of joy started rising up from within me. And I'm like, whoa, like there's something to this. So I started experimenting with aiming lower, because I was always aiming high, always reaching for the stars and all of that kind of thing. And then as I experimented, things really did shift for me in my business. Actually, I really began to accomplish more in a couple of months than I had in like 3 or 4 years. So it started to have a really significant meaning to me. But then what happened is this kind of message evolved a little bit, because it's like I realized it wasn't it wasn't so much aiming lower and having like small goals, although that can definitely be part of it, like breaking them up. It was the pace at which, or the velocity at which I expected things to happen, or anticipated things to happen. And a lot of us are like that. So that kind of new overlay came in, that it was sort of more aim slower than aim lower. You can still have big visions and dreams and all of this sort of stuff. So that's the sort of little snippet kind of thing about where the whole term aim slower came from. So I found out about Tammie. Tammie's got, what are those, you've got a set of cards, Tammie, that one of my clients have. What can you tell me about those cards? What are they called again?
So I have the Celestial Activation deck.
Yeah.
which is healing codes that I pretty much channeled. Used to do energy healing, hands-on energy healing.
Yeah.
And this is where the codes really started to develop and really make their presence felt, is when I was doing these energy healings, I was channeling through codes related to different chakras or different energies that the client was going through. And after about 9 months, I started noticing that there was similarities to some of them. So I asked my guides what's going on, and they said it's because you have a master set. So that became the deck, was the master set. So
and so
that's a whole
yeah, and let's touch a little bit on this idea of I mean, the designs, from what I have observed, they're very is the term geometrical. They're very, I guess what would be classed as sacred geometry. And we hear that term, and it can also be like, oh, sacred geometry, but like, what is that? And what is it that makes it sacred? That's something that I've been fascinated about. I don't know if that's like an easy question, but anyway, give it your best shot.
Okay, so for me, sacred geometry is about placing shapes, lines, dots together to create an energy portal, basically. So traditional sacred geometry may be balanced, it may be it's everywhere. It's in nature, it's in religious stained glass windows. Some of it has picture symbols like chalices, and some have more shapes. So when I tuned into sacred geometry, it wasn't very traditional, as in straight out like Merkaba stars or Tree of Life stuff, which people are familiar with. There was like light codes added to it, or light language, written light language, which is totally was out of my comfort zone to what it meant. I had heard light language prior to that, but I didn't know that some of the stuff that I was bringing through was what I now know as written light language. So combining that with the shapes and stuff that I was seeing, for me, I call it sacred because it aligns the energy to, like for the cards, it aligns the energy to the healing of that card. And when I do individual codes or collective codes, it aligns the energy to an intention or to a goal, or if I'm doing a personal type healing one, it aligns them to like a soul essence almost. And so whereas I might put a triangle in somebody's one and then put a triangle in somebody else's, the sacredness becomes what that triangle means to that person and how that guide brings that triangle through. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I wanted to just, show everyone, this is, of course, the code that Tammie did for me. And I've had it, this is a new color. In fact, we're going to go and talk about your process as well. But I just want to say, one of the things that came through for you, Tammie, was that it was very much about the color blue, right?
Yes.
So I had sort of presented some ideas about watercolors and things like that. And yeah, something that came through to you was this idea of it being like, on a blue shirt, or the code being blue, and all this sort of stuff. So I totally love that. And my favorite shirts now are the navy blue with the white code, or this is actually a really light pink, which it's a little bit hard to show up. It probably looks more white.
It looks white, yeah.
Yeah, with the blue writing. It's so, I love it. Like, and I certainly resonate with blue. A lot of my, I probably wouldn't say I officially have brand colors, but I guess unofficially I do. It's like very blue, and I love blue. So let's talk us through a bit about your process of creating this code, and how, from your perspective, what happened.
Okay, so I was actually really excited to connect with you online and talk about your project. And as we talked more about your project, I got really, really excited because it came, initially I thought I was just creating a personal code for you, and the evolution of our conversation turned into that I was creating a collective code that represented a part of your business as merchandise. So that got
Goosebumps.
really, yeah, that was really exciting for me. And as we tuned into that, that's when the color blue came in, because for me, the word behind it was balance and truth. And so I wrote those down, and then you were talking about joy and how it was slowing down and stuff. And it resonated with me because part of my business is about self-care. And so that is about slowing down. And so being the blue, and I asked you, does blue represent anything for you? So it was quite exciting. And when I found out it was a collective code, it was pushing my boundaries, my personal boundaries, to create a code. I create collective codes on a regular basis, but creating a collective code from somebody else's perspective was a whole new sort of mindset almost. So I had to tune in to your intention, but I also had to include how other people might receive it. So yes, you did start with watercolors, and we'd talked about potentially having a blue code because that was very strong through our initial conversation. But we also talked about having a white one. And I worked with your idea of the watercolor theme that you had, but intuitively I also listened, and I went off on a slightly different tangent and did some watercolor backgrounds on the code instead. And it was a bit nerve-wracking to put that forward to you because it wasn't what we had discussed, but you actually really, you're like, oh, I've had this shift and that kind of fit. So it was an interesting process of trusting on a new level, because creating codes, there's this element of trust on both sides. Trust that you're getting the right product, and trust that you're bringing in through the correct information for the intention or the goal.
Yeah, and that's right. I remember, I mean, as you would if you're a designer or working with anyone, you want to try and meet their expectations. And I remember there was this conversation of like, did you have any idea of what it might look like? And I shared with you, well, I began to go down that, path of should it be more round or should it be like this? And then I was like, Danny, don't do it, because really just let it be what it needs to be, So, and that was great. And going back to the blue thing as well, what was interesting that you said that is, I mean, really before I contacted you, we hadn't really interacted. Like you were not really aware of my work. I didn't even know
who you were.
It's not like, you knew my brand or you knew anything. So it's not like it could be an easy, like, oh yeah, I see Danny and blue all the time, so it wasn't like that. And it's interesting. I really love the watercolor design that you came up with. I haven't actually put that on anything yet. I might do. Maybe it'll be a limited edition. But I ended up really liking, actually it could look good on white, couldn't it? But anyway, a white t-shirt. But I ended up liking the crispness of just the white on the dark or the blue on the, I really liked that. So, yeah. So anything else that feels like important to share about the process, or about how you like to work with people? Would you even be open, I imagine you would maybe, to helping other people with collective codes or personal codes? And actually, before you answer that, another thought I just had to mention is that I wanted, and this is, this, but just for anyone listening, it's like I wanted my wisdom of this subject and to be embedded, but also like as well as you were saying how people would take it, but the collective wisdom that even I'm not aware of in terms of that. So that's really great. And there's a couple of really good uses that I found it for as well. So like I like to wear my shirt on a Friday. In fact, I kind of wearing them more and more, but like particularly the Friday, it's like slowing down. I also find it feels really good to wear it when I'm in the blood time of my menstrual cycle, because that's all about sort of, deep rest, or even the autumn period, like leading up to that, which is about slowing down. And, you know, it's really just, I think, good for anyone like who feels like they're rushing around, they're just spreading themselves too thin, they're just crazy busy. You know, I just really, you know, even if someone thought that sacred geometry or light codes is like BS, even if they think that, and you know, sometimes I'm not sure what it all is, but what I am strong and definite about is the intention behind it. You know, that's the energetic intention, right? And I don't know if I inserted that at the beginning. I think I may not have. You're an intuitive energy artist, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, any kind of final comments, things to share about this?
So there's just a couple of things I'd like to share with you about the creation of the design.
Yep.
So like the main circle, reason that I put the main circle on there was it was about the ebbs and flows. So that's what it was symbolized, because initially I was playing around with the diamond. This is hot off the press,
guys. I've never heard this before. This is hot off the press, right?
And when we first had our consultation, I didn't know you wanted the words aim slow on it. So in the middle of your lotus flower, there's actually a little glyph in the middle petal, and that is two words combined, aim slow. I write words and glyphs. So that actually is aim slow written in a certain way that I do glyphs.
Yeah.
So it has the power of aim slow in the glyph as well as on the side in writing.
Yeah.
And the multiple triangles at the bottom.
Let's have a look at that.
About forming balance and foundations to honor yourself. So those were the three main things that came up when I was channeling your intention. And that's what I do. Energetically, I tap into your intention. And because it was collective, I had to allow myself to expand to how other people might perceive it as well. And that's why there's other little bits added in there, because it's just an overall energetic feeling for your intention to be visual, because many of us are visual, and so having a visual anchor helps with the energy. So whether you believe in sacred geometry or anything, having that intention and connecting it to the energetic intention, that's where I find the power and the soul medicine of creating symbols.
Yeah, love it. I've actually had a client kind of request a new design as well.
Which I think I read that somewhere along the way.
Oh yeah, that's right, in the Heart Center group. Because that was another interesting thing. She's like, you know, I had mentioned this shirt in relation to human design generators, and you know how it can be kind of, you know,
that was new to me.
Yeah, like to go, you know, and there's like the medicine can be, well, yeah, that's great, that's your, you know, that's your way, but it's also very helpful to slow down so you can observe and watch what's coming into your field and that kind of stuff. So she was calling this the generator t-shirt, and this is another really interesting thing, because I'm like, no, it's not just a generator t-shirt, you know. And she was like, no, okay, she's like, whatever, but I want my manifestor t-shirt, like my human design.
Well, I am a manifestor in the human design. So for me, slowing down and being by myself is a huge part. So I actually resonate with the t-shirt really, really well as well.
Yeah.
Because as a manifestor, you inform people and you interact with a lot of people, but you have to take your quiet time. You can't recharge properly as a manifestor if you don't take your quiet time. So yeah, I resonate with the intention behind it.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
Yeah. And that's right. I mean, you know, I often say don't make human design a religion either. It's really helpful, but you know, I think I do think there is a message in here for everyone. It's like saying, you know, everyone needs an amount of quiet time, you know, for quiet reflection. It's the same thing regardless of your freaking design, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess watch this space in terms of the next design. There's we've got an interesting concept about and again, it could be for anyone, but, you know, helpful for manifestors is it's like this idea of to be, well, one word is like this idea of audacious, and the other is about daring greatly, because manifestors, their medicine can be, you know, stop waiting for permission, right? Go and actually do it. Yep. So like there's, yeah, so this will be interesting to explore with you further about how can we embed the intention of like to give manifestors that permission, I guess, to not seek permission, right? Yeah, so wonderful. Well, this has been so good to talk to you about this shirt and learn a couple of things about this design. So thank you so much for your time, Tammie, and I look forward to doing some more work with you.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, bye for now.
Bye.